Okay, so it's great to be here with everyone, and great to be back at the BCS as well. In the past, I've came to many meetings and presentations which have been highly useful. So hopefully one day we'll all get back to face-to-face meetings, etc. So let's look at the topic itself. This is what we're going to talk about tonight: remote project management, the challenges it gives, the opportunities it gives, and also the way that the things that we currently know and do don't need to change that much, but there's other things that we need to be aware of as well. So remote project management, why it's important. Simon gave me a really great introduction, but I'd probably like to give you a little bit more about what I'm currently doing. I recently joined the NHS as a project manager within the PMO for the COVID-19 and flu vaccination program, and there I'm trying to bring in best practice into the COVID program itself. And I joined Axelos in May 2014, working as an SME in the project management space. Joined BP in 2010 as a risk program manager, because risk was always the first port of call that I really enjoyed, and that's what I'm continuing to do within NHS as we currently speak. In 2000, I joined British Gas as a CRM program manager. But before 2000, I was involved with the automotive industry, specializing in process design and continuous improvement at both Nissan and Toyota. And in this area, I also became familiar with lean design and Kanban process controls. And at Toyota, I was fortunate enough to gain the award of Lean Design Practitioner. As Simon has said, I've over 20 years project and program management experience. So I'm basically a process person who's moved into a risk environment, who's moved into projects and programs. So that's a bit about me. So let's delve into remote project management and what's involved in that. When we look at remote working, working from home, working in the office, this is a new norm with a hybrid mixture of face-to-face included. So you have the virtual world, as I call it, the 2D world, but then with a small amount of 3D world included in it when we all meet up face-to-face. But it's important to note that the face-to-face interactions, that for projects are lost for now to a certain extent. So we've got to compensate with it by looking at the remote world. So we now and for the foreseeable future manage projects in this way, and the demand for projects will increase as organizations strive to catch up post-COVID, and that's a global shift at this moment in time. Recent figures by the UK government show that for the first time, unemployment is as low as it's been in about 50 years, and there's a surplus of jobs. There's more jobs than there are people unemployed. So, and some of that will be heavily involved in project work. So the demand for projects will increase as organizations strive to catch up, as I said, but projects will continue to be risky, and the demands on project managers will also increase. And that is one thing that's basically not going to change. And I think all of us who are project managers know that we understand the concepts, etc., but we need to be clear about the new dynamics that the remote world brings. So let's just basically recap on the basics of project management, and then we can tie it in to the areas of the remote virtual world that really are important to do so. So what is project management? And we need to, let us discuss first of all what project management is. And in essence, it involves the planning, the delegation, monitoring and control of all the 6 aspects or constraints of project performance, which we all know are cost, timescales, quality, scope, benefits, and risk. The virtual environment poses challenges in this area since project management is more complex than it appears. If it was all very similar to the diagram I've got on the slide, there would be no problems with it. But there are constant challenges with projects, which everyone who's involved in it works on a daily basis. The virtual environment, as we will see, poses additional problems. So what does a project manager actually do? And this comes from Prince 2, and this diagram, which I affectionately said was the spider diagram, or the complex spider diagram, because it's got about 10 or 11 arms in it. This could have been a lot more complex, and I have to admit there could be more, but the virtual lens adds another layer of complexity to this already demanding position. And let's only consider a few in this scope of things that the project manager does. Line management, leading and managing a team, an incredibly responsible position within a project, and supporting when necessary. Really hugely important to get done. Communication, and this is something that I sort of always like to state at this point. We as human beings love to talk, but we find it hard to communicate effectively in a project environment. And previous research and comments I've had with my project management colleagues in NHS is this continues to be and will be even more of an issue in the virtual world because of the complexity of communication. Changes, and this is changes within team or changes within the actual project environment. This is the lozenge at the bottom. This shows how they will affect the team and the project stakeholders, but also changes to personnel affects team dynamics, which is a really important factor. And what I'll do throughout the talk, I will basically be mentioning some agile concepts and ideas, because as Simon mentioned, I've got quite a lot of experience in this area. And agility is something which is now fast becoming like good business practice. And the adoption of hybrid and agile delivery is becoming the norm as your organizations strive to achieve what they need to achieve. Another vital aspect here is monitoring progress and issues, but also includes the well-being of team members. Teamwork includes required behaviors, a lot harder to do in the virtual world. Only 2 dimensions does not allow within the aspect of communication, does not allow body language indicators to be assessed, which is a major drawback of the remote world, whereby if you're giving a message to someone within the team, within a project, in a project meeting, you can tell how they're feeling by not by what they're responding back, but how their body is basically responding to that particular feature. So that's a very interesting point, and we'll talk about that in more detail. I could probably spend the entire talk tonight going through each part of these lozenges, but I thought I would actually basically highlight the ones which were particularly relevant as well. So we have the complexities of the remote world, but what are the challenges facing project managers today? Workload. Project managers are required to do more with less. That continues to be a facet. Technology. The attraction of technology, for example, the adoption of AI and reliance on technology for meetings, for example, like tonight with us, is Zoom or Microsoft Teams, which we use continuously on a day-to-day basis. Communication, as we've mentioned before, still the #1 issue for project scaling. It would appear that the communication within projects becomes distorted, and sometimes the messages are miscommunicated. And project managers need to be very, very important about this communication, because they need to liaise with other departments to remove external blockers. So they need to have excellent interpersonal skills coupled with excellent communication skills. This doesn't just keep the team efficient, but also increases the respect the team has for the project manager, because it fosters a communication-rich environment for the project teams. And it's important to note that the value that project managers bring is not their position, but the fact that they make everyone better. And that's a sign of being a really, really accomplished project manager, whether in the remote world or in a hybrid world, or if we ever get back to that, the face-to-face world. And it's important that project managers must use the most appropriate channels. Using the written word to record logs or documents or decisions, visualizing in the form of pictures or figures, verbally by telephone, and verbally face-to-face, and also using technologies such as Zoom or Teams. And to help with that in this virtual world, the project manager needs to getting the blend right. So effective communication needs to be organized and planned using a common project glossary or vocabulary. This is particularly important in the remote world, where the communication is absolutely got to be spot on, so that they are aware, people are aware of what you're communicating to them. Communication is so important. It's important for the project manager to monitor the effectiveness of the communication taking place. And one option that I've actually used is basically a simple traffic light dashboard. So the values will be subjective, but could be red needs immediate attention, amber needs attention as it will be causing some damage to the project. Green, these are fine, but still need to be monitored on a regular basis. Prince2 itself advocates the use of a common glossary, which explains what things mean, but also includes clear roles and responsibilities in addition to reporting on progress being made and risk being highlighted. So communication is hugely important. And let's not shy away from it. The remote world produces more challenges in this particular environment. Another particular area which project managers face today is leadership. And leadership is highly important in project management. And leading a project management team in a risky endeavor is absolutely vital to get it right and basically lead the team. And as we'll see more when we look at the remote world in more detail, this is made even harder by how do you get your point across? How do you explain this particular environment? How do you explain this particular issue? And lead the team as well. And also to complete I always call leadership, communication, and team management. Sorry, I've given away the last bullet. The last bullet being team management. So the triumvirate of leadership, communication, and team management. And team management, which is now given more focus in this virtual world. So these challenges will be affecting project managers today. So let's look at them in more detail, and let's see how, when we look at the practical tips later on in the presentation, about how these can be addressed. So workload. Required to do more with less, and this is not going to change soon. And project managers must learn to cope with this in this hybrid or virtual world. The job stays the same. In fact, the emphasis on the job is becoming more and more apparent as organizations strive to catch up. More and more projects are becoming the point of organizational focus. Projects normally start by changing organizations, so they have an organizational focus. So senior management are looking at how the organization functions. The complexity of the role. And basically this adds to the burden or the actual workload or the components, because projects are typically risky endeavors. They are ambiguous. They contain a certain amount of risk, and which are sometimes basically not enough focus is given to risk in that particular area, but they are risky endeavors and complex. So these three factors contribute to the workload of a project manager going forward in this virtual hybrid world. When we look at technology itself, what we're seeing, what I've been seeing more and more, is the rise in the use of artificial intelligence, and this is used on manual repetitive tasks like generation of reports, data extraction, data quality reports, and this is something that's really coming to the fore. And also in certain aspects of the NHS, we're seeing AI being used for screening in certain cancer types as well, so that AI now is becoming more predominant. And for example, the AI, the generation of the weekly highlight report, this is something that basically AI can take away from you and allow you as a project manager to focus on the things that really matter, like managing your team, making sure communication's correct, and leading the team. And technology reliance on MS Teams and Zoom, and we're all on a daily basis becoming MS Teams and Zoom gurus. And each day I find a different thing that MS Teams can do. And let's not get away from the fact that will never replace, and this is my opinion, never replace the face-to-face interaction that projects give. And that's really so important, because projects are all about people and people interactions. And at Axelos, we come up with the phrase 3D people, because we've been working from home remotely for so many years, for 2 years, that all we saw were people on the other end of a screen. So it was important to have that interaction. But as a project manager in this remote world, you've got to become more of an expert on these products and be happy and comfortable with them. And one which one of my colleagues would probably advocate today, laptops are becoming used continually from dawn to dusk. And this is placing huge pressure on the performance, huge pressure on IT infrastructure and IT support people. And that's one thing that the virtual world is produced for the organizations, is that they've really got to step up to the mark with their IT support, so that basically they can maintain the laptop performance, because this allows the technology to happen. So that's 3 high-level points about technology. I'm going to go back to communication, because this is how the problems with communication and how that can be resolved in the remote world, but also where you can actually have more and more issues. As I mentioned previously, it's still the number one issue. And it appears we love to talk, but we find it hard to communicate. And I think this is because of the pressurized project management environment, where everyone's striving to make the projects a success, achieve what needs to be achieved. But they forget that the communication, if it's not done properly, can lead one person to have one perception about one thing and another person another perception. And it also involves the ability to communicate and influence with a diverse and sometimes skeptical audience. And this is where it becomes a real challenge in the remote world, whereby you're presenting a difficult concept to a skeptical remote audience. You don't have the ability to basically present effectively to them, because you're restricted. You don't have the ability to convey your message more effectively or walk the talk, as they sometimes say. And projects are always demanding. with lots of uncertainty, so communication problems are inevitable. And this is a challenge. And also when you increase the numbers of people in a team, then the number of communication channels increase exponentially. So the risk of communication breakdown increases. But communication needs to be addressed. Don't shy away from it, and it needs to be addressed in this new world in which we face, in which we see ourselves. And communication is basically what was once written, and I've actually used it here tonight. It's the oxygen of the project, and it needs to be proactively addressed. And any issues with regard to communication in this remote world basically needs to be addressed as well. And also, if there is communication breakdowns or breaches, then as soon as possible, they need to be resolved. And the channel challenge, and this is part of our talk tonight, the channel challenge, what this channel does to us. And the best way to communicate in a project and program environment is to use face-to-face as much as possible. And this can, and sometimes does, produce a real problem in this virtual world. Therefore, project managers need to enhance their ability in the use of Zoom, Teams, or other collaboration tools, which can help build a multifaceted approach to communication. This needs to be done so that the team can have a good experience and in turn fosters emotional bonding and buy-in to a discussion or decision. So the project manager is fully prepared, they're happy with the technology, it works well, and everyone can have a good, proper meeting, which then in this different environment helps the team bond and also take on board what the project manager is saying. So communication challenges, but also opportunities. So leadership, what's really important in this remote world? Confidence. And this is what project management is all about, leading the team with confidence and being self-aware, not getting flustered when things go wrong. Manage conflict within the team and address and remove impediments, obstacles, and blockers for the team. Blockers, we sometimes use that as in an agile term, but a blocker, an impediment, or an obstacle, that's what good PMs actually resolve for their team to make them to be more effective. Also then endorsing the correct behaviors. And it's really important that there is a short list of the behaviors which I'll basically take you through. And you endorsing the following behaviors which can be viewed as good business behaviors, such as collaboration internally and externally within the team and to stakeholders, exploration, whereby the team are trying to solve a problem within a time constraint, transparency, being transparent, honest, which ties in with the next behavior, and honest, transparent and honesty, very important, and empowering within tolerances and guidelines, empowering the team to get on and get the job done. And also empathy for one another. This is hugely important in this remote world, whereby you can't go round the corner and have a coffee machine coffee with another team member. You're either going to ring them up or have a Zoom call with them. So empathy is really important to have that. But also for the project manager, being available at all times. And do not go missing when the going gets tough, and have confidence. And when you're delivering in a virtual environment or engagement, this is a really good metaphor that I actually saw somewhere. You want to appear like a swan swimming across a lake, calm above and paddling like crazy below, so that the team can see someone who they can rely on in this particular world. Because you can actually see on teams, you can see people who have got different behaviors regarding certain aspects which are being brought through. You can see the change happening, or they switch their camera off so they can get themselves refocused. But the leadership, these 3 bullets, I feel, in this remote world really are important for the project manager. When we look at team management, which is another vital important aspect of the project manager's work, we've got to look at the supporting the team performance. You know, you appraise the team member performance against key performance indicators, as we all know, support and recognize team member growth and development, including training, and promote team performance through the application of emotional intelligence. And this is like being aware and working together and having the right sort of behaviors to basically work problems through and work the projects. Build the team, you know, appraise stakeholder skills, deduce project resource requirements and training. These things don't change in a remote world. And continually assess and refresh team skills to meet project needs and new environment needs. This could be training in the use of Microsoft Teams or Zoom. Main team and knowledge transfer and define team ground rules. And build shared understanding in the team. Ensure a common understanding is achieved. This could be done by regular catch-ups or one-to-ones, etc. But there needs to be that understanding of what's actually been delivered in the team and what needs to be done. So let's just set these parameters and the challenges, some of the challenges that project managers face in this remote world. So let's look at the future. And basically, I've said that the future, the remote world will continue, or virtual world will continue. The hybrid world will continue to a certain degree, whereby people will be in the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week and the rest working from home. And the third aspect, back to where we were before, I'm not so sure that I'll ever return, but that's for another debate. So let's look at the future of project management and how some of the future aspects will basically help with the development of project management going forward. So as we're saying, do more with less, and due to wider economic factors, pressures, etc., will continue to increase on PPM teams, meaning project and program managers are required to do more with less, and organizations are constantly trying to strive to catch up. Project management and AI will become more and more familiar. Project managers will see artificial intelligence as an automation opportunities. I always used to personally, on a Friday, mark up lots of time to do highlight reports, which would be excellent if they could have been automated. Communication is not going to go away. It will remain the #1 challenge for project management teams. And if we're not careful, we'll be further compounded by the virtual world. Utilizing lessons learned, ensuring work is monitored and evaluated on a going basis, and that the lessons learned from past projects feed into the planning of future projects continuously. And it's important to know it is whether you're in a virtual world or a face-to-face world, utilizing lessons learned continually is no longer project management theory, but now an actual necessity of what needs to be done. As I've mentioned briefly, Agile Adoption. Successful teams are likely to work in an agile way, but they need the wider organization to enable this in terms of support and processes. So they need this acknowledgement, but they also need to acknowledge the ability that Agile brings. And also because Agile requires communication, then basically this puts the communication medium under more scrutiny within the remote world. Senior management representation. Successful projects are likely to have representation among senior representation managers and organizations. So senior leaders need to identify the value of project managers and understand the challenges they face. Also, the importance of continued professional development and the importance of basically an overwhelming majority of project managers believe it is important to actively invest in continuing professional development, or CPD. It's really important to have that so you can understand how and when your career is heading. And also the importance of transferable skills. And through some research that we were involved in at Axelos, the top 12 transferable skills rated by employers were oral communication, presentation skills, collaboration and teamwork, initiative, problem solving, organizational skills, adaptability, flexibility, independent working or autonomy, written communication, critical thinking, resilience, creativity, and analysis and evaluation skills. So on top of being a project manager, to have these transferable skills is hugely sought within industry. Really, really important to have these as well. And at the end, but not because it's less a priority, and the increase in hybrid delivery methods. And this is a mixture of traditional Prince2, sequential or linear project delivery methods, but also interlinked with Agile. We're seeing more and more of that because organizations will do what they need to do to get the job done. And in the future remote world, this will not change. So that's the future of project management as a role. Let's look at the future of project management within the market space itself. The first extract is from a bit of research that we did at Axelos, termed the Power of Certification report. And this shows you the feedback from employers about that professional certification, i.e. Like maybe getting Prince2 practitioner or MSP practitioner or any other practitioner grade, leads to the higher workplace efficiency, higher employee satisfaction, because it brings a lot of value to it, and greater workforce transparency because people are confident about their skills. So it's hugely important. So certification is going to still continue in this new world as well. And to couple that, there's a bit of research from PMI that by 2027, 87.7 million PM professionals will be needed. And that was prior, this research was done prior to COVID, so this might even be higher going forward. So the future job market needs. The first one is also from Axelos Research. And this is from our Axelos PPM benchmark report. And this is about PM practices. For example, if you're using risk management, you're using a particular method, it doesn't matter what as long as you're using a consistent method across your organization. And if you've got that proven practices, you waste less money, surprisingly. It's no surprise because basically you're using best practice, you're reducing waste because things are being done properly. And the second part is from Wellington, where and this is a bit of research from 2020, where 89% of organizations now report having one or more PMOs, increasing steadily from 71% reported in 2016. And PMOs are going to become more and more important as well, because they'll be the conduits to basically try and help organizations in these remote worlds. So how a project management method can help organizations improve communication by having a common glossary of what things mean, and this drives improved communications with stakeholders and within teams, because you get that drive saying, what does this actually mean from a stakeholder? And then you've got to be fed back into the team. And what this does is it gives improved alignment by having a centralized approach to project management, regardless of the method or framework you're using in your organization. It's got to be centralized, and that results in consistency, clarity, and efficiency for the organization's projects. As long as you're using a consistent method or framework, that's the most important thing. What really can be problematic if one or part of the organization is using method A and the rest is using B and someone else is using C, then you will not have consistency or clarity nor efficiency. So having clarity and efficiency for the organization projects improves trust, since everyone knows what everyone else is doing and able to influence organizational culture. Very important, because organizations need to change so that they can align the work and break down the silos, and also unite teams and process it by following the project lifecycle with defined activities. I mean, that's what Prince 2 is in its entirety. It follows the project lifecycle with defined activities, inputs and outputs, and improve focus through continued business justification. Regardless of what you're doing, you've got to make sure that what you're doing is worthwhile for the organization itself. And improved cost control using a standardized approach, and improved effectiveness to manage time, cost, risk, benefits, and cost and quality. And this ensures that the resource you're using is justified and is constantly, and investment is consistently measured. These things don't go away in the remote world. They need to be managed more effectively as well. So project management is going to continue within the virtual world. Remote project management is going to be even more so important, because there's going to be a market need for project management. So let's look at some practical tips that that project managers can use in this new world. When you're having meetings, all cameras on as much as possible, so that team members can see one another and interact, so they feel connected and are able to contribute. Because if you're working from home 5 days a week, it can be a lonely environment. And cameras create visual connection and are essential for virtual engagement. And this is really important when key issues are being discussed within the actual project itself. Hugely important. There might be reasons when you can't have the camera on, but as long as you make it aware, like, I can't have my camera on, blah, blah, because something, but it's really important as much as possible to have the cameras on. In the virtual world, you've got to be clear in purpose. What's the purpose of the virtual event? Who's the audience? What do you want them to think, feel, or do differently as a result of the virtual engagement? This is what and this is where, if you look at the slide, where they have the dynamics of the boardroom is removed and you're replaced by this particular camera. Enhance the virtual experience, or the virtual engagement experience. Create pathways to do this. Use common vocabulary or glossary from the method you are using to ease understanding. I've used mural boards to enhance involvement. Chat, annotation, file access, and polling can also amplify the pathways between the team members to improve virtual engagement. It's really important to have that. The only thing round about if you're having a meeting, though, make sure if there's documentation to be moved through, it follows normal channels like email, etc. I've seen information being lost on chat in Teams. Be the best facilitator. Become the host. It's really important for project managers to become this. So how do you manage the time? How do you engage participants? How do you make sure you're organized for a virtual environment? I have a checklist that I have for the meeting preparation, which I go through before having the actual virtual engagement. And how do you adapt your own stories and engagement techniques? Facilitating virtually is a different experience, and it requires far more preparation and intentionality. It's really, you've actually got to do scenario plan it in your head before you actually do it. Because what you do in the virtual world, you lose some of the flexibility you had when you occupied the same room with people. And you must be mindful of the issues that arise and how you will address them. And this is where you've got to be emotionally, using emotional intelligence. Be very, very careful about the language used as well. So there's a lot of preparation involved. Some people maybe can apply what they've done in the face-to-face world in a virtual world, but I think it's a different environment and needs to be treated as such. Make technology a friend. Technology, I always worry when I present this bullet in the slide deck, because in case something goes wrong. So moving swiftly on. So no, making technology a friend. Technology can be your friend or foe. And technology can be a foe if you're not comfortable with the virtual platform. You haven't figured out all of the idiosyncrasies that can happen, or you haven't assembled your backup plan or don't know what you're going to do if things go sideways. And it's your job to make it a friend so you're comfortable stepping into that, and it's second nature. And you can focus on engaging people. And also, what that does is that if things go wrong, then you've got when the things go wrong, go from left field, and you can't do anything about it, then you've got the confidence to handle that. And the most important thing around technology, you can't ignore it. This is the way things are going to be for the foreseeable future, or as someone said the other day, maybe the new normal. Because people are based at home, and they are basically they're not in a meeting room, it's very important to avoid boredom and distraction. And people need breaks, especially in virtual sessions. And I use a 60-15 model, being sure to take a 15-minute break every hour. And boredom and distraction can start setting in heavily at the end of a segment. So you plan out what you're going to deliver, and so at the end of a segment, it's really good to include energizers, small, spontaneous, or planned events. And it's designed to re-engage and re-energize a group, especially when they return from breaks. And polls are also very useful in this area to get the team re-engaged. Polls are very important if you're presenting a particular topic as well, to get feedback on how well it's been received. So that's some practical tips for project managers. This is not by any means complete. There will be more added on this as we continue along the remote project management journey. But it's a starter. So some practical tips. Also, there needs to be practical tips for project sponsors, who are equally as important, or even more so, because they are the people who are taking the the business case throughout the organization. So actively participate, plan to connect via Zoom, Teams, Skype, or other virtual conferencing platform during updates and projects, key events, milestones achieved, etc. Celebrations, end of projects, training sessions, and team meetings to show your support and encouragement, regardless if it's on a remote or virtual channel. Sponsors need to organize their time to do this correctly. And in NHS, every fortnight, there's a sponsors briefing, which is basically via Teams to the whole of the NHS from the senior leadership team. Form a coalition of sponsorship, and this is not seeing the same face all the time, but take the above activities mentioned with the executive and leadership team and keep each informed of the virtual appearances you've each done. So everyone then becomes aware of who's doing what. And no one becomes a stranger, and everybody in the organization knows who that particular sponsor is. Sponsors should also share insights, stories, and experiences during employee drop-ins with colleagues, executive team, lunch and learns, and including feedback and responses received. And in the lunch and learns are very, you can still do these remotely, as long as the sponsor's there to share their findings. And the most important thing as well is that communicate directly with employees. This is for the sponsor. That offers greater flexibility and virtual reach for the employees in remote areas and across small groups. And for individuals by utilizing available mobile collaboration apps, etc. In addition to the platforms used on laptops and computers as well. So you can utilize chat functions, chat discussions and functions, and for posting messages, people can read and respond. Or these questions can be sent in beforehand, populated in the chat, and then the project sponsor can actually answer the particular questions going forward. And so, that of course has got to be planned. The messages people can read and respond to later when a live connection is not possible. So Teams has its own particular history. And by communicating directly with employees, it endorses project communications. And as a project manager, you must provide your sponsor with what would be beneficial, with a checklist at the start of the project, which you can fill in together as the project progresses. And I've seen examples of project sponsors going through checklists and sharing it with the project teams to show where they are and what's been achieved. Timely support and these decisions. Provide, from sponsors' perspective, this will also include the endorsement of decision registers, but also provide timely critical business decisions by organizing their time effectively to do as well, and understand the implications of the decisions regarding budget and resource, of course, and also support their project management teams, since there needs to be a balance between the two, because you've got the sponsor and project manager, and the project management team must work in balance. The project is the typical project board, project management team interaction, which must be balanced. So it takes a lot of organization, but it can be done. And most progressive organizations are doing so. So, practical tips for teams. How can teams work together in this new world to make it more effective and break down the barriers, which can easily take place in this particular new world? So, collaborate. What are the expectations of the teams we manage? They need to be able to collaborate with one another, since breaking down business silos is a key factor to effective project management teams and also business success. And that's why I particularly enjoy working in projects, because it improves business efficiency by the breakdown of these particular silos. Being transparent. They need to be transparent with one another, hugely important, because they're sharing information. And some of the information might not be that what people have been expecting, but that's what the information must be. And this goes back to one of the three pillars of Scrum, where you're looking at something being transparent. People need to understand it's clear, they can understand it very effectively. Being honest, and this couples in with transparency, whereby people are, the information needs to be clear and understandable, but at the same time, it needs to be an honest guide of what's actually been done. And this is particularly important in a virtual world. And this is where the benefits of a good PMO come into place, whereby you can have everything placed in one particular area, and it's a single source of truth. That can help with transparency and honesty. One of the tips that I particularly like for teams is self-organizing. And really good project management teams need to be self-organizing to manage their workload effectively to achieve the desired objectives set out for them. Within tolerances, I have to caveat that, so that they know what's the most important thing that needs to be delivered, and they're able to do that. They self-organize themselves to do that based on their skill sets. And that might not be within one team. They can self-organize within other divisions within the organization, which breaks down the actual silos and barriers. Adhere to roles and responsibilities. And this is understand the importance of roles and responsibilities and adhere to the detail. And this is something like who is doing what. And this is something that we've got to be particularly careful in a remote world, whereby you can assume that someone is doing that particular role and has that particular responsibility, but in reality they don't. And this is something where you're in a face-to-face environment. You can go around and talk to someone at a water cooler and basically find out the importance of who's doing what, etc. And that's why organizations these days are now, because of the remote world, are putting a great emphasis on organizational structure and the roles and responsibilities included in that. And being engaged in a remote world is hugely important. And be engaged to what is being delivered by the project and the importance of the individual's work in achieving this, and the importance to the organization. So being engaged is very, very important. So let's have some more practical tips for teams. Use rich communication channels. And what I mean by this is use a variety of channels to aid communication. For example, use face-to-face and written word. Feel connected. Projects need constant communication. And they are, as what we stated earlier, the oxygen of the project. So team members need to feel connected. They need to be included so that therefore they can feel that they're being communicated effectively to. Share learning. And sharing learning is important, since since this will improve the overall efficiency of the project management team. Someone has done this particular task this way, and they've got the benefits of doing so. Really important to do that. And be excited, have energy. Being excited, since excitement, when channeled correctly, adds to the energy which is required in the project management team. And this is something that's really, really important in the remote world, where you can find that people can stop feeling connected and basically not communicating effectively to, and therefore their energy is reduced. So, and being excited and having energy rubs off on other people, and other people become more and more happy working with that person, and the project management team becomes more and more effective. Where necessary, use exploration to resolve issues. And when you have this time, use exploration techniques or experiments to resolve issues. This is using another agile term, but we've all done this regardless if it's an agile or a sequential project. And this will add to the confidence of the project management team. There's nothing better for a project management team, whether it's in the remote world or the sequential traditional world or face-to-face world, that they've brought something new in to solve a particular issue. It just gives them so much more confidence to improve what they're doing. And don't be afraid to fail within the team. But the most important thing is learn fast from it. This is coming back to one of the agile frameworks of lean startup, which I particularly like. But don't be afraid to fail. Be within the constraints, but learn fast from it. And it goes back to about the continual sharing of lessons learned as the project increases. And that should be done anyway, regardless of the medium you're using. But learn fast from it. Really important to do so. So as I come to the end of the presentation, I've just got a few conclusions that I'd like to give to you before, so you can take them away and think about them in more detail. The virtual world is here to stay. It's going to be with us for some time, so we really don't have a choice. But let's consider some of the advantages. What are some of the advantages? And I'll use my own example here. Whilst I was at Axelos, the ability to travel around the world from your office. During the webinar series last year, I went round the world 4 times, having various webinars in various time zones, etc. So I probably saved the organization a fair amount of money in travel. It's also forced organizations to increase the sophistication of their online platforms, including audience participation. It's also forced organizations to address their IT support as well, and basically how quickly to respond. That's one thing with NHS is really hot on that, is the I have a problem with my laptop, and how quickly they respond to getting that fixed. And basically, virtual platforms can help level the playing field. For example, with introvert learners, because people often communicate, ask questions, or contribute ideas at the same time in multiple ways. And so sometimes the loudest voice gets the biggest audience, and that's not usually the right message that people want to hear. So the introvert learners, this is an environment that they can actually utilize more effectively. And in other areas as well, the virtual world has developed a new channel for virtual events as well. I think these are now going back to face-to-face, because virtual events do take an awful lot of preparation to do so. And also reduce costs on people traveling, etc. So there is advantages. So it's not all, it's a challenge, etc. There is advantages can be made. It's a place we have adapted to, and we need to be comfortable with this new world. And I think that's what this is what human beings do. We've got a new, and that's why we've evolved. We've got a new problem, we've got a new challenge, and this is what we've got to do. We've adapted to it. And also, to a certain extent, we've embraced it. And this is where the, with pets and children all now being involved, in some cases, the kitchen sink has become the new office. And that's what we've had, that we only could have done that by embracing the situation in which we found ourselves. And ultimately, we've embraced it since, in reality, we had no choice. And in reality, going forward, there is only, well, three choices. There's the hybrid, there's the virtual total, or total face-to-face, which I don't think will ever come back, because we've embraced it and moved on. But the most important thing to take away is that even though we have all these challenges in the remote world, and which encompasses remote project management, continued need for project management skills in this hybrid world, and it will continue to be an option as we move into this new world. The PM skills will need to be enhanced in this new medium, but the foundational skills that project managers have, regardless of the method or framework which they use, will need to be embedded. They will be regarded as foundations. I think as human beings and as collections of organizations, we must use this medium for the foreseeable future. So we have to enhance our PM skills so that organizations can implement projects and ultimately progress their organizations and the people who work for them. So I'd like to thank you for listening to my talk tonight.